Hello, my name is Katrina, and I will be presenting on the materials from the past 7 weeks and how it relates to improve my interpersonal skills. I remember being a young child in elementary school and playing a game where the teacher would line us all up in a line and give a sentence or a phrase to one of the students, and then we'd have to take turns whispering it into the ears of one another and go down a line until you got to the end. And of course, the funny part of the game, no matter how many times you did this, every time the last student heard the phrase after it had been repeated 20 or so times, it was almost every time vastly different from what was originally stated. And that can be a really funny kids' way of discussing miscommunication. And sometimes when you hear something incorrectly, even at home or you're out with a friend, and you stop and clarify, you can both sometimes laugh about what you thought you heard versus what was said. However, when communication is done in a way that is incorrect or disrespectful or perceived as disrespect, or when the stakes are high and emotionally charged, miscommunication isn't funny. It's damaging, and it can cut off relationships sometimes permanently. But when we make a a pledge and resolve to communicate well, to communicate with care and love, not just at work but also at home, the effects and the benefits that you can reap from that can be life-giving and healing. And that kind of puts into perspective just the importance of all the concepts we've learned these past 7 weeks. Some of the things that we've discussed that will be discussed in this presentation include our DISC styles, our interpersonal skills, listening and talking skills, our needs to display empathy, warmth, and communication. We've studied materials these past 7 weeks and tied in how we can adjust and improve our communication methods in our personal, professional, and spiritual lives. When it came to the DISC pattern as introduced to us by William Marsden, according to Father of DISC 2025, the DISC style was introduced to us in 1928, and it highlighted 4 different categories. My categories that I tested highest in were the S, C, and the D. The S and the C are the types that are motivated by stability, support, quality, and correctness. And the D was the tie-on for my results when I'm in private. And that is the type that can be motivated by challenge and control, according to Uniquely You, pages 3, 4, and 5. My interpersonal score was 100. I did not understand how I got a 100 on that test. I took it 3 times and I still got the same score. I found that hard to believe about myself based on friendships that I've lost in the past, but that was the score that I received. And according to Queendom in 2019, a person with a score of 100 can see things from someone else's perspective pretty well. They can usually tell when people are confused or uncomfortable. And this has been a blessing for me in previous work as a jailer when I have to think on my feet and had to have quick conversations with inmates and determine in a short amount of time how to navigate either conversations or even where to physically house certain roommates with other roommates. The behavioral blends that we also discussed were those of the talker and listener as described to us by Peterson. The talker's role is to acknowledge when they are the most bothered and they own the problem and speak first when the talker and listener are deciding to have a conversation. And that's according to Peterson 2022, page 91. The talker needs to share their feelings and their thoughts, but they need to do so in a manner that is not accusing, attacking, or labeling or judging the other person, according to Peterson 2022, page 91. The listener's role is to be calm enough to hear but not own the problem, and their goals have to be to provide safety, understand, clarify, and they must also listen without agreeing, disagreeing, advising, or defending, and that's according to Peterson 2022, page 93. When it came to the talking patterns, I did realize pretty quickly that the talking patterns was not something that I don't believe I had ever had to assess about myself. My pattern before knowing Jesus, though, and after serving in a tour of combat in Iraq, Most of the time, my pattern involves shutting down or not talking at all, and building resentment for not feeling heard, and ultimately some kind of emotional blow up. Peterson, 2022, page 91, explains that the talker has to be the one that owns the problem, but the problem does not have to be a negative feeling. Peterson also says that he used the word concerned as a reason to bring up the need to have a conversation, and that stood out to me because my pattern before has been, if I'm concerned about something, I internalize it, I think it over and over, and bring it up in a moment where I'm not emotionally healthy and expressing what I need. So I found that to be the most interesting of all the words. That even when you're just slightly concerned about something, that you can stop and pause and prioritize having a conversation. My behavioral blend as a listener included one of the observations I learned about myself was that I do have the pattern of taking ownership of the problems of others, and that's personal and professional, in my personal and professional circles, and I give advice. But the best thing that I can do is to listen and empower those to help them focus on their own problems, as recommended by Peterson on page 101. Hemming and hawing is a technique that I immediately incorporated into the work that I do now, and also with my loved ones, because this helps with a counselor who might have a need that they need to fix something, or to it gives them a way to fill silence with hemming and hawing and not giving a suggestion, as recommended by Peterson on page 103. I immediately recognize that my clients do all call in distress, because I do work with homeless or at risk for homelessness individuals. So a lot of the calls they're always in distress, they're always emotionally charged. And based on learning about how to alternate thoughts and feelings when you're speaking with somebody, as described by Peterson on page 53, I immediately implemented that listening skill and saw dramatic improvement on how I gather data through my assessments that I need to do for work. Because I have the FCD score for my private life, I will have to be quick to forgive and ask for forgiveness, especially with my spouse, when I'm saying things that are out of line or just not respectful. The D style of my personality style at home, if I leave that unchecked, it will have negative impacts on how I communicate with my loved ones. According to Schultz and Benzicki, forgiveness is a wonderful and a mutual way of life that makes reconciliation possible. And with having that D score, I need to live and give that space of forgiveness in my home and with my loved ones. Some personal communication barriers. With that D score in my private life, it may indicate that I can be assertive and decisive. But I was not proud to read that, according to the Uniquely You report on page 12, it also said that I can be harsh, even much more in private than I can be in public. I recognize that, as reported by Loveless of 2023 on page 12, over half of all behavioral health providers experience symptoms of burnout, and I must be proactive in managing my stress to avoid becoming part of that growing statistic. I also understand that burnout can lead to serious health consequences such as anxiety, depression, hypertension, and insomnia, so I will have to make sure that I prioritize my self-care. A professional barrier, according to my Uniquely You score on page 9, my public speaking skills are less impactful than in private or small group informal conversations. My CS type as well, according to that same report on page 7, say that I might not be as bold or assertive at work, and that might hold me back from opportunities. I will struggle with watching clients make or delay decisions that could make their situations worse. That happens a lot in my job. And when a planning style clashes between a counselor and a client, this causes space for internal tension. And that's according to France and Weekle, page 60. And although I am naturally people-oriented in small group settings, I need to expand my comfort zone to engage with larger audience, as recommended by Carbonell for my DISC style on page 188. I also will have to not let my humble and quiet nature prevent me from speaking with conviction and influencing others positively, according to Carbonell, page 188. I have to recognize as well, just for my spiritual health, to protect myself from burnout, I have to make sure that I find ways to manage my stress according to Santos et al. It discusses those experiences of burnout, and the best way to do that is, of course, to prevent that with stress management. I also understand that burnout, according to Santos et al., can lead to serious health consequences, and I need to learn how to ask for support when need be. Some personal goals and strategies for self-care: I need to set boundaries around the emotional labor that I do, not just at work, but also at home, which is something that was not happening prior to taking this class or taking this course, and realizing that there's some private and public, perhaps imbalances in self-care, and which affects communication. So perhaps instead of walking my dog in the morning, as much as I like to do that, when I know I'm going to have an emotional day based on the amount of clients I have or the type of work I'm doing on a particular day, those would probably be the better days that I schedule to just take my dog on a walk after work, kind of take my dog out, enjoy being outside with my dog, and enjoy watching him as I kind of de-stress from the day. Another professional strategy would be that I need to understand that my style of planning will likely not be the same style of those that I serve and work with. I will need to seek feedback regularly and remain unoffendable as much as possible when I seek that feedback. I can do this by asking trusted colleagues or clients for feedback on how my communication makes them feel, if they felt safe, heard, or pressured. And that's a tip given to us by Schultz and Benzicki from 2015. I will do well to set clear goals with my clients, to see what they want very early in the process, and to give them autonomy and a reference point for them owning their problems. This will both help us keep us focused and help us stay on track, but it'll also let my style let them guide them where we're going to be in the discussions, not necessarily in the actions of what they're doing. But if I let them set their goals, it gives me a solid structure, which is what I need for my personality to stay focused on. And yes, I will of course continue to make space for them to talk about all the other things that are occurring, but it can be done in a way where we're still reining in a lot of those feelings and putting them into thoughts for what their goals are that they initially identified. So that was another professional strategy that I put in after this class as well. I actually went back to my program manager last week and told her I need, for my personality style and just for overall clarity for guiding our conversations, we need to add goals and objectives for my clients, because prior to that it didn't exist. Especially because the work that I do is not counseling by label, or even it's the official role. My job is to coordinate systems for the homeless, but it does frequently end up becoming 30 to 40 minute assessment sessions where my clients are letting me know everything that's happening all at once because of it affecting their living situation. So it's not the type of job where I can just shut that off and let's just talk about this and let's just talk about your housing situation, because many times everything is affecting the housing. The relationships are affecting the housing. The addictions are affecting the housing. The conflicts are affecting the housing options. So this class was very beneficial to me, just for having self-awareness on how I'm communicating with others and how I can make improvements and how I can go forward with the new people that come into my life with this information already. Thank you.